We need an Attorney General who has the experience as a prosecutor to serve as our state law enforcement officer, our top law enforcement officer, who has the managerial experience to run an office of over 1,000 employees, who wants to be the very best Attorney General that he can be, and one who doesn't see this office as just a stepping stone to the governor's mansion. Republican candidate for Attorney General, Mike Kreitz.
Thank you all very much for being here this afternoon, and certainly Rachel and Sheriff, thank you very much for your endorsements. I very much appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here today to announce my candidacy as Ohio Attorney General. Regrettably, troubling circumstances have led us all to this special midterm election. Now, while I'm proud to run for the post of Attorney General, I want you to know that I'm not very proud of Ohio's recent political history. Thanks to an episode of Democrats gone wild in the Attorney General's office, Ohioans have had to endure an unfortunate parade of incompetence and corruption. People in this state are ready for new leadership and a new perspective, and that's exactly what I will offer. Ordinary Ohioans who have more important worries than the latest silliness in Columbus know one thing: neither political party has a monopoly on incompetence or on corruption. Like the rest of Ohio, I've been embarrassed by the misdeeds of Republicans and Democrats alike, most notably disgraced former Attorney General Mark Dan. Ohioans have a right to be angry about what has happened. They have a right to expect that action will be taken. And while it was too little too late, I will give a certain amount of credit to Mark Dan for one thing. He publicly acknowledged that he was not qualified for the office of Attorney General. His biggest deficiencies were that he was never a prosecutor and that he never managed a staff the size of the Attorney General's office. Sadly, my opponent, Mr. Cordray, has the same deficiencies. In this election, Ohioans need to pay attention to ensure that they do not elect another politician who's unprepared for the difficult and challenging task of being Attorney General. The taxpayers will end up paying millions of dollars to undo the damage that Mark Dan and his enablers caused. We can't afford that again. And restoring trust in that essential office must be paramount in our priorities so it can perform vital legal service for all Ohioans. I've known Attorney General Nancy Rogers both professionally and personally for a number of years. She's a smart person with an impeccable record of integrity who deserves praise for her work thus far. But despite the best efforts of General Rogers, the damages caused by Mark Dan and his enablers won't be repaired in just 6 months. And the investigations that will ultimately unravel the potential crimes and legal and ethical violations that took place are months and maybe years away from reaching their final resolution. Indeed, it will take every bit of the next 2 years and some very tough decisions to fully restore the Attorney General's office to the national model it once was. Those tough decisions will require experience, the kind of experience that can only be gained through a lifetime of law enforcement and government management experience. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a professional politician. I'm not a career politician. The only time I've run for office is when I ran successfully for the position of Olentangy Local School District Board of Education. Professional politicians are always looking for another political opportunity to run for another office. I offer a different background. I've spent my life serving my country as a naval officer and serving my state as a career prosecutor. In the Navy, I rose to the rank of captain. I had the privilege of commanding a number of units in the Naval Reserve, and at one point helped as the primary deputy to Commander, Naval Reserve Force Readiness Region 8 in Jacksonville, Florida, approximately 7,300 people. That's leadership and government management at its most challenging. For 21 years, I've served as a prosecutor at every level of government, and I'm proud to say that I have more prosecution experience than the last 7 Attorney Generals combined. The challenges in the Attorney General's office will require judgment and maturity, the kind of judgment and maturity that only that kind of nonpartisan public service can bring. My opponent, Mr. Cordray, is a decent and honorable person who's climbed quickly in his political career. He's an experienced candidate, and I respect his political skills. But I offer a different choice for Ohioans. I'm the only candidate in this race who's taken on organized crime and won. I'm the only candidate in this race who's investigated deadly drug gangs and won. I'm the only candidate in this race who's prosecuted white-collar criminals without regard to favoritism or friendship. One classic example, and it's probably a case that I shall for eternity be tied to, the Pete Rose case. Growing up, I loved baseball. Pete Rose was one of my heroes. Few people play the game better than Charlie Hustle, and certainly no one was more aggressive at running the bases than Charlie Hustle. But when I was the United States Attorney, we found that Mr. Rose had evaded paying his federal income taxes. So, because everyone must be accountable and everyone must obey the law, I prosecuted Mr. Rose. It wasn't a task that I enjoyed, but nonetheless, I took my oath seriously, and I did my duty. I promise you that I'll bring that same approach to the job of Ohio Attorney General if I'm elected in November. And let me just point out, Attorney General is the only statewide office that I have any interest in. Far too many people think the initials AG stand for aspiring governor. But as someone who's built a career on fighting criminals rather than waging political campaigns, I can tell you that the only AG I'll ever be is Attorney General. And that's if the voters place their trust in me in November. Now, in the weeks to come, I'll be talking very specifically about my detailed plans for the office. Today is about the beginning of my campaign. In the next several days, I'll be meeting with many other legal professionals and putting together my point-by-point agenda for change. So I'll defer questions on those specifics until we all meet next time. For now, however, I will leave you with this. Although I'm a proud Republican, and proud to be a Republican who was nominated to be the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio by President Ronald Reagan, I've never been a down-the-line partisan. And I'm not about to change that now, ladies and gentlemen. I prosecuted Republicans, I prosecuted Democrats, I prosecuted independents, and they only had one thing in common: they broke the law. In both the military and law enforcement, like an umpire in baseball, you have to call them as you see them. That's what I learned during the course of my education at Annapolis, and that's what I practiced in my service to my country as a naval officer. It's also what I practiced as a prosecutor for 21 years. And if the voters elect me, I can assure you that I'll continue to call them as I see them as Ohio Attorney General. As I begin to visit with the voters of Ohio, from Ashtabula to Cincinnati, from Archbold to Marietta, I'll look for support from all voters. But as I hit the campaign trail, those who support me should know one thing. It's something that Mark Dan forgot along the way. My supporters and friends shouldn't expect favors from me or the office of Attorney General. We've seen far too much of that lately, and it's time for a change. I'm looking forward to the challenge. As a prosecutor with 21 years of experience, I know how to resolve a problem. As a naval officer who helped manage thousands of young men and young women in uniform, I know how to right a ship. And that's exactly what I intend to do when I'm elected Attorney General. and I'm ready to begin.